Alright, you saw the proof. The power window's not working real well, especially going back up, so keep watching. We're going to show you how to replace a regulator on this 2001 Ford Crown Victoria. First off, we're going to remove this screw here in the outside corner of the door upholstery. And it's just a Phillips head screw, no special tools required. I'm sure everyone watching has a couple in their toolbox. And get that out. Although the screwdriver just slipped, see? There we go. And out screw number one. And it's a long self-tapping screw, interior screw with the flat head. Alrighty, next we're going to take and carefully pry this plastic trim piece from around the interior door handle. It doesn't take much, just a little fine screwdriver and that little, you can see just that little opening in it. Pull down. Like pry down and out, and that's off. Again, nothing there real magical to do on that step. And behind that is a Phillips head screw. That's why it had to be removed, and that'll need taken out. So instead of talking about it, let's get in here and let's remove the screw. And here we got it zoomed in for you to see it actually turning out. And we're going to, and that's on the other hand like a Phillips head screw with the built-in washer molded in with the screw because it's hidden behind that plastic. The other one was that flat, like tapered head, so it molded in good with the plastic and made a nice flush fit. Alright, that screw is removed. So see, we're already 3 steps into this. 2 screws removed and that trim piece around the door handle. Now we're going to take off the panel that holds the power window switch and the power door lock switch. Pry up. This is a little stubborn. You gotta carefully on this front. There's like a metal clip that goes into the plastic, and if you're not careful, you'll break the end off. I accidentally, when I first bought this car about 10 years ago, broke the one on the driver's side, but I'm going to get it, and it didn't break. And there you can see what I'm saying, where index finger's right over that clip, and there's the wires, and they don't even need to be disconnected. Now with the power window switch and the door lock switch out of our way, another Phillips head screw behind this, and we'll turn this one out. Now this is another one of the flathead ones that makes the nice flush fit, and that's out. And we're going to proceed here to do the next step, which is going to be a screw here in the bottom of the door panel, and it's hidden back in that hole right there. And we're just going to take and turn that out. And this should be the last screw we need to remove. And we're getting pretty close to the panel off. But this car isn't real difficult to remove the interior door panel on, not like some cars I've owned in the past. Okay, we're about got this screw out, and there it is out. And there is basically the final step is going to be removing this door panel. And this you want to just take before you pull out, lift up, straight up, and take and put the power window switch down in the hole where the armrest is. And then after you do that, just pull out and you are free of the door. You don't want to pull straight out like a lot of the old cars with the clips in, or you'll break these L-shaped plastic brackets that's molded into the back of this interior panel of the door. This is actually a lot nicer setup than the old cars with those clips, but again, don't pull straight back on it or you will ruin them. And you see what I'm saying too, you didn't need to disconnect the wires from that power window switch, you could just fish it back through the door. Now this door panel, those L-shaped brackets sit in these holes, they're located strategically around the perimeter of the door, and again that's what you were lifting those brackets out of, is those holes. And when it comes time later on in the video to install the door, you just want to line those up, and we'll be pushing it in place when it comes time for reassembly. But there they are, like I say, they're all around the door and across the bottom edge. Yeah, I know those old clips, half the time when you pull them off, only some would stay in the upholstery, some would stay in the door, some would break, some wouldn't. Although I will admit, they, unlike those L brackets, you break them off, you're stuck just putting a screw or something in it. But at least those, yeah, you could change them. Alright, back to our trusty friend Phillips screwdriver. We're going to take the Phillips head screws out that hold the speaker in. It'll help immensely in assembly and disassembly. The speaker out being able to reach in. I don't think you could really do it with it in place, and it's not that hard to remove, and there's only these 3 screws that hold the speaker in. And be sure you're removing the Phillips head screws, not those little bolts. That's to disassemble the speaker from the speaker bracket. You'd be making a whole lot of extra work that isn't necessary. Again, there's only 3 of them, but yeah, don't take the bolts out. Take the screws out around the bracket itself, and it'll all come out as one piece here, as you'll be seeing here in a short time. Okay, last screw, and as I was saying, out it is. And don't forget to unplug the wire before you get pulled away from the door. It's not going to come real far, and it's unplugged, and there's our speaker along with the bracket in one complete piece. And now it gives a great amount of room to get access to the interior of the door. And now we simply peel away this piece of insulation plastic without trying to rip it. The world doesn't come to an end if you do tear it some, but I always try to keep them intact. Although I know some of the older cars had like more of a paper bag substance, and with moisture and that running in the car, they'd a lot of times disintegrate. But there it is, and it is usable for the next round. I'm going to fold it up here and put it out of the way inside the car, and we're going to go to the next step. And simply we're going to move the inside window wipe by a matter of just pulling straight up. No tools really required other than your hands and fingers, and that's off and out of our way. And now we're going to take here and unhook the power window plug from the clip at the door that holds it in place. Just work back and forth gently, and there it's out. It's got like teeth on the edge of that nylon clip. Right, we're going to put the window down here. One, I'm going to show you what we're going to have to remove to get the regulator out is the rivet right there. And also, we're going to have to temporarily put the window the whole way down to get this weather strip off. Okay, down it goes here, nice and slow. And this is a matter of just simply pulling. There's no screws or clips or anything. It's just like a groove in the rubber weather stripping. It sits like right around that lip on the door to pinch well. Now we're going to put our window back up a little bit, and we're going to take in the middle of these is like this stud that you can't, it's next to impossible to drill through, and just take a punch and knock that out. But be careful, we are working around glass, and these sometimes will pound right out effortlessly, and sometimes they're stubborn. There, that one just came out. Now, this little square hole in the bottom of the door is the access to the outer, and this one's not as nice to access, but this must have been what they were thinking when the car was put together. And get our punch lined up good and start tapping inwards there, and hopefully it'll come out. Yeah, the big key on being successful on this is just sort of having the right size punch and little luck. And here we're going to go back in, take another tap or so on it. Yeah, this was out of a punch set there. I bought at Harbor Freight, one of them, and still not yet. Going to have to take and hit some more on it, and there it goes. Yeah, it's sort of victory once you get that out. The next step's not near as nerve-wracking in my opinion as we take and drill the remains of it. Okay, and once you got that out of the center, using a 1/4-inch drill bit, you just want to drill right in the center until you go out through the other side, and with a little luck, hopefully it will split in two and it'll be freed. Okay, this should be drilling a little bit easier, and we are going to do a drill bit switch. And lo and behold, there we're making progress. You can see the shavings flying. Yeah, because these are just aluminum's all this part is, and we're just about through. You can fill it with the drill, and there's what I was talking about. There's the head of it, and the other side fell inside the door, but that's freed that end up on the regulator. Now we must just repeat this one more time, this close to the glass, and this is the one where you're working at the big wide opening. Makes life a lot easier. And with our sharp drill bit, we're going right through this like the knife through butter. And we're all but through it. Hey, look at that. And that is accomplished. Now at this stage you want to take and grab the glass so it don't go falling in the door. And carefully work it down, and we're going to sit it in the bottom of the door until we're ready for reassembly, and it can just hang out in the door. Like I say, once it's against the bottom and it can't fall any farther, you're safe. And this makes the job a little less nerve-wracking now too, because again, you're not working like right at the glass. And there it is, complete with all our metal shavings and that in the bottom and the back sides of the rivet. The only thing you want to use caution on until it's back together, slamming the door with this in this position. But myself, I'm going to be working on it till it's done here. And now this actually holds the regulator itself. There's two more of these here on the bottom of the door. We got to pound the center out, and then we'll be drilling them. Now, at least on this vehicle, maybe you'll have different circumstances. The ones in the window itself, the ones we just removed, the center seemed to pound out real easy. The ones on the door here bottom don't seem to be working as well. One, probably because it is in through a piece of metal. And since the metal was thinner than the glass, it really gave the chance of the rivet to make a good strong crimp there. And they probably crimped it stronger because, again, you can't break this part like you could have smashed the glass with it. And I'm going to have to switch punches up here and go with something with a little bit better, hopefully more pounding power to it there to get them started. And it's starting to move. And we're going to go back to the thinner punch and pound some more. Like I say, there is finally, I think, one of the move. It's in some, but just not what we need just yet. Like I say, when it does go, it'll make the trip the whole way through, slick as can be. One reason these are a little stubborn to pound out the centers, you'll see when you do yours, they have grooves on them. They're made to bite that they don't pound out, but they're out the centers. Now we can just drill again. And again, no problem on the drill. And these are aluminum. Like I say, if you're having trouble on this step, providing you got that center part out, it's time for a drill bit. There, that caught. Now it didn't want to come the whole way up, but now we're just going to take a chisel. It's all but through, just like a hair's holding it, and problem solved. Now we're just going to take and drill the other one here in the bottom. And believe it or not, after we're done with this, there's still more of these to do. Yeah, actually in total, there's the two that holds the window to the regulator, these two that hold the bottom of the regulator to the door, and then there's three more that hold right around the power window motor itself, which this is the first one of those we're going to be doing. So like I say, between all of them together, it makes 7 of these, if I'm adding it up there. 3 at the window motor, 2 at the bottom, and 2 in the regulator. Yes, it is. Yeah, you're done with changing one of these regulators, you're either going to learn to really get good and like removing these, or learn to hate them. I think I've come to learn to hate them over the years, but they're nuts. When I first started doing this, again, I kept trying to drill the stupid thing with that piece in the center, and that don't work. And up here, the window's out of her way and all, I'm starting these off, they're being stubborn with a rather large punch. Now this won't push them the whole way through because it's too thick, but on the other hand, I did get lucky. It did push them the whole way through. I just hit them right and hard enough. And again, with not so much have to worry about the glass, it did work this large punch. Now this is the final one to knock the center out of. And see if we pull this one off with the big punch like those other two. This really, in theory, shouldn't have worked there, but I got lucky on them too, because I just hit them right and it popped the whole way through the center of it. Well, I say it's starting to move. Maybe I am going to pull this off 3 in a row with this. Again, don't use a punch of this size, those first 2 at the window, but yeah, it did. Right on in it went. So those 3 weren't as bad. And now, just repeat with the drill again. One problem you will encounter when you try drilling these is the drill catching, and then it just wants to spin the whole remains of it around, and that's what that one is doing. So I'm going to move on to another, and we'll come back to that one. Sometimes they'll do it, and sometimes they won't, but like I say, there's another one that wants to catch and just spin. See, we're making up for the centers of these coming out easier with problems in another respect. So now we're going to take a little finer chisel than I had used earlier, because they didn't drill the whole way through. Don't want to really mess the door up, but okay, number 1 it came off, number 2 off. It must have drilled just down past where the door layer was, and number 3 off. Now, believe it or not, after all the rivet removal, the last thing that holds the regulator inside the door itself is these 2 10mm head bolts. Now, it'd been nice the whole way through. They would have used a setup like this from the factory, but yeah, well, I guess they figured 7 of them. You deserve to break on the last 2 mounting fixtures, and there's our nut off the one, and then just one more. And again, you work right through these holes at the top of the door. Yeah, I never have figured on these power windows why they do use so much of those like rivets instead of using nuts and bolts, but part of the reason, I guess, they assume with the window going up and down they could work their way loose. Okay, now that that's off, we're going to take for extra room and remove this extra outside window wipe on the door. We're going to have to push the regulator up a little bit there to wiggle and jiggle it there, and that gives us just a little bit more clearance. Okay, this could have been done earlier, but I removed the clip that held the clip to the door, but unplugged the power window, the connector here is what I'm trying to say. That is where we pulled it out earlier, but now we're going to unplug it. I almost forgot. Yeah, that could have been done at the same time. I don't know why I didn't, but it's unplugged. And then we just want to fish that back in, because that, again, the power window is going to come out with the regulator, and at least the regulator I bought comes with the power window motor. Okay, first off, push in where you remove the nuts to free it from the door, and then I pulled the whole regulator along with the power window motor towards the back of the door, towards the latch side of it. And then what we're going to do, I've tried to get it out this way. It's not going to come with bringing the motor out first, so I'm going to shove the motor back in the door, and now take the whole regulator and just push it there. Now you can see here up towards the front part of the door. In other words, the bottom of it's facing the door hinges, and the top of the regulator is going to be facing the door latch. Okay, and once you succeed at that, you bring the top part of the regulator out through the large opening, and then just work the rest of it, the motor and the cable that holds the motor, rides the window up and down, all that mechanism with the pulleys and cable, right out through the door. I assume it's how they wanted you to do it. On them, there's sort of like one way in and out, and I think I found the way. And there's the old one along with the new one sitting side by side. Just make sure what you have, it's going to match up. Everything's the same. Particularly, like I say, the power window motor electrical connector and all the mounting points. There's the electrical connector on the new one, and here is the one on the old one. And get the light on it here right, and I would say that's safe to say they're the same. And like I say, just check everything else. And the new one came with actually new nuts, the only 2 places that aren't riveted, and take those off because you'll need them off to place it inside the door and through the holes where it bolts to. Okay, get this last nut off, and then it will be time to go install this back in the car. And I just can't hardly wait to get it back together. And here we are back at the door, and we're going to install it the same way it came out, with the bottom part of it facing the door hinges, and work in nice and gradual under. The biggest thing here in this hole when you're going in, again, is that metal rod that goes for the inside door handle to the door latch, working around, but it does work. And then you can reach in through where the speaker went. That was another reason to pull the speaker out and fish it in the door. And once you're there, just gradually tilt it right back up in place. And to start with, we're going to put it right in those studs in those top 2 holes and put our nuts on it. And once those are in, that'll hold the rest of it in place till we put it together. It's probably why the only reason the factory did give you the nuts on 2 and the rest of it's all riveted was just to start it in. So probably, well, like on the assembly line, probably some machine did this and then another machine put all the rivets in probably at one time. Who knows with the automation of the factories of today. But anyhow, we'll tighten these up. Which leads us to, after this, the ones that were riveted. Now, I do have a large rivet gun and large 1/4 inch rivets. I'm going to rivet mine back in. And like I say, I'm going to start with doing the power window motor. In theory, maybe you could use a bolt and nut on these, but in some places it probably would be really hard to get to. I'll include a link in the description here of a rivet gun, but at Harbor Freight. And these rivets also come in at Harbor Freight. They're still 1/4-inch rivets. And I'm going to start them all in the hole just to be sure it's where it is. It's lined up where it should be before I snap one of the rivets off. Yeah, I do recommend getting one of these rivet guns and doing it this way. It's roughly, I think it was around $20. But like I say, I think you would drive yourself insane trying to do the nut and bolt thing, but to each his own. And they do take, that's where the large, now there is smaller rivet guns, but the big two-handled, like you're trimming, cutting a branch or something off a tree with a cutter there for the lawn and garden, you need that extra leverage. And there's one snapped off. And we're going to get the second one. When I snapped the one bottom one fell, but it didn't matter. It was already tightened up in place. It should be where it needs to be. And then we're going to get the second one. And you see I'm using my leg there because I couldn't work it with two hands at the time there. So I got the, once you start pulling on the rivet, it'll start holding. But you get that first pump on the tool, it won't hold yet. And another argument, instead of if you would want to try using nuts and bolts to put these in, another plus of the rivets, they won't work loose so handy in time. Now you can get a nylon lock nut there to use, which would help, but probably the rivet thing is honestly the reason the factory put them in was just what I said, in time they'd vibrate loose. And here we're going to line the bottom of the regulator up and put our two rivets into place. And when you do this with the rivet gun, do remember, like you can see my hand inside the door pushing in on the regulator. Again, you want to be sure it's in place, because if not, the rivet will miss and you'll end up just breaking the rivet off into the hole and you'll miss the regulator. Now once you get, again, that first pump on it, it's held in place. And now with the one and the other one's no problem. I can take here and use both hands and not have to worry about the bracket not holding. And we'll put this on, and here goes one more of them. And you can see the amount of torque it takes to break these. That's why this large rivet gun's a necessity. I couldn't really picture breaking one with just a regular handheld rivet gun. Like I say, I didn't own one of these rivet guns like this for years, but thanks to Harbor Freight they become quite affordable. Okay, after all that strenuous work with the rivet gun, now we simply have to plug the power window motor back in. Get to take it easy here for a little bit and make sure it snaps into place. And then we're just going to wiggle it around and put the holding clip back in the hole drilled in the door to hold it in place so it don't get tangled up. And on top of the above, we need to adjust the regulator that we can reinstall the window to the regulator itself. Going to get it here nice and positioned to one side in a big, large, wide opening. And this earlier, I put in the text there about using the bolts. Yeah, this I do not rivet it with one of them big rivet guns. I'm 99% certain the window will break. This is one I will use the bolt, and I do have, you'll see here, the nylon lock washers, which shouldn't work loose real quick. Again, if they would per se work loose, and I don't think they're really going to, it's not going to fall out all at once, it'll start rattling. And there is our nylon lock nut, and I'm using the size is 1/4 inch. And as you can see watching the video, logically I'm going to put the nut on from the outside. In other words, I installed the bolt from the out towards the rear side of the door, the interior of the door, and now I'm carefully, the one's then going to bring it up here that I can get the other bolt in and working in through the speaker hole. And there you can see it, barely. This is a little bit trickier to get to. Yeah, that was really nice. If they would have brought it up there farther towards the speaker hole, you could access it. On the other hand, I'm not going to be able to take and tighten it with the door handle in the way. So this is just a matter of one screw we're going to take out, and we're going to get the door handle out of the way. Should have did this first. Well, see, I did it for you in the video, and now after you take the screw, this just slides towards the door hinges after a little, and then inside, don't get too rambunctious and break the door handle. You got to take and remove it off the rod, and it's just plastic, that door handle, so it would break, so just use a little care. And now we can put our lock nut on, and we can work in through the hole where the interior door handle had been. Yeah, on the removal, I drilled the rivets, if you watched earlier in the video, through a square hole that wasn't real large in the bottom of the door, but I didn't have the patience to reach in around and get to this to put the bolt in from the back side and the nut on, so this is working just fine. And again, for future reference, and again, if you're watching this, you could actually take this off first, and even on the removal, just drill the up here in the window up in the farther position. But okay, we got that. Now tighten these cautiously, don't go crazy, or again, the window will snap. Now there is like rubber, plastic, nylon washers that the factory has that's on that window to help support it, that you can do something like this. But again, don't go real nuts with it there, or again, it will break. Sort of an unwritten rule of thumb, I tightened it till right it snugged up, and then I just basically gave like maybe a quarter of a turn after the final tightening, and I'm going to say that is tight enough. That's all I feel comfortable going on. And again, worst comes to worst, can always snug them up down the road. Okay, now we're going to put our interior window wipe back on. And that's just a matter of pushing it right on the top lip of that door and in place. No big deal there. After that nerve-wracking job of just tightening the window up, nice break. Now we're going to install the outer window wipe. And on this, that like front edge that I'm pointing to, like slide it underneath the mirror first. Just push in. That was where, like when on the removal, I pulled up and then straight back. It's sort of you'll see when you do it. It's just sort of not real hard, but a little bit tricky to start it under that mirror. But once it's under that, it'll just push down into place using my hand for a hammer. But just tap nice and lightly, and that's back in. And now we're going to take and put the window down, and we're going to run the window back up, and it does work. And just like I say, making sure everything's good before we go put the rest of this back together, starting with the interior door handle. Okay, and install the handle, get the rod that goes from the latch to the interior door handle out through the hole, and then just that hole in the handle, push it on, and then just sort of like it turns downwards over it, and it's hooked back over. And then just to put it in, you'll see there's like little notches built in that black plastic part of the handle, and it just slides back towards the latch and door. And once that's in place, install our Phillips head screw. And that concludes one interior door handle. And on this, back down to some antique cars I've had, this is very simple interior door handle installation compared to some of the older stuff, and it's working. It's hooked back up. You can see the metal rod moving. Ready, now we're going to just put the wiring harness clip for the power window switch back in the door. It's getting ready for reassembly and putting the actual door panel back on. But one thing first, this is very optional, but all that metal shavings and those parts of those rivets the inside, I'm going to vacuum the inside of the door bottom. Again, this maybe it's overkill, but I'd sooner not have all that garbage laying around in there, and it don't take long to do. And that's one of the reasons about the shop vac. And there's the back part of one of those rivets that got caught in the end of the shop vac while I was vacuuming it out, and we're going to say that's good enough. Oh, and this little rubbery like foam plastic part that goes around the interior door handle, don't forget to put that back on, although it would work without it. And now we're going to put this little piece of plastic insulation back on. Got to fish the power window combination door lock switch through it, and then just line it up with the speaker hole and around the interior door handle and all those hooks where the interior door panel went. And getting it back in place, there was a piece of tape there I had on it, because like I say, I had this apart a while back. And once we get that in place, the speaker, get the screws in, will help hold it. But before putting the speaker in the door, don't forget to get the plug in for the speaker wire out and to plug the speaker in. Again, I say this and remind, because I've done these things over the years. And there we can get that, and then we're just going to get this through the hole in the plastic and put the speaker back against the door, and look at that. It keeps wanting to fall off. This is getting a little aggravating, so we're going to take care of this here shortly. Alrighty, that it is. It seems temporarily it's going to stay put till I put some of these speaker screws in, so I don't have to start over on this. And remember, there was 3 screws that held the speaker in, like in a triangle shape pattern. Again, pretty easy step here compared to some of the ones on this. This, again, doing these is not real hard, but it's nerve-wracking because of working with the glass. I think that's pretty much any time you're working with window regulators, the most nerve-wracking part of the whole job is just the fact of that. And there goes another screw in. There's 2 in, and I'm going to check the other one again, and then just the one right in the bottom of it. Get that in place, and at least the speaker's not going to fall out, and the plastic's not going to fall out around where the speaker is. But now, on the other hand, the back edge here, it keeps wanting to fall down, so we're going to pull it up in place and just use a couple pieces of masking tape. And once the door panel's on, it doesn't matter. It'll be held in place till the next time it's done, but this will take care of that problem of it wanting to fall down. From the factory, these have like an adhesive on the back edge, which you'll see when you take yours off. And sometimes that adhesive is still fairly sticky. It'll hold really good again. And sometimes it won't. Well, again, I had this part about a year ago because I first tried before breaking down and getting the regulator, and it helped for a while. I tried just lubing everything up with some grease and everything else, and it did work, but again, I knew it was regulator time, and there we got it taped in place. It won't move. Now it's time to bring the door panel over and get it lined up. But before we go to put the door panel actually on, don't forget to fish the power window switch and the door lock switch up through the door, just like we did when we disassembled it. And then once that's in, then we can take and lift the upholstery up. And remember the hooks. And instead of pulling up and out to remove, you're going to be pushing down and like a little push back to get them into place. And one of the trickiest things is just getting the doorknob there, the lock there in the hole at the same time while coordinating everything else. But just keep working back and forth, trying to give you different views on the installation. And then there she goes. She slipped down in place, and it's all just a matter of a few more steps. From the side, the door panel's sitting nice and tight against the door, so it did catch in those brackets and push down into place as it should. And now we're going to take here and put our screws back in, starting with the one down below the door handle, one of the 3 of the flathead ones. They're all the same screw with the exception of the one up above the door handle. And we'll put that in, and as proof also, the door's lined up. It's threading right in, turning in, and tightening up just like it should. Okay, and then we're going to take and put our power window switch back in place. There's a tab at the back towards the armrest that goes in first. And then, yep, at the front's that big clip, and then there's like 2 clips around the edge, and if it's in, it'll sit down in place. And then there's our flat-headed, well, not flat-headed, the one with like the washer built in, and we're going to turn that in, one up, like I say, above the door handle, which leads us here to put this little plastic trim piece around the door handle after this screw's tightened up. And the slanted part just goes back towards the door latch, and of course the handle sits through the opening in it, and you just slide that back over and snap it in place. I'm at a little trouble getting it snapped in place because just the position of that foam piece around the door handle and that, but when it goes, providing the clips aren't broke, it will stay in place. And then we're going to put the screw right here by the door reflector and tighten that one up, which leads us to pretty much the completion of this project, with the exception of the one screw in the lower edge of the door, which we're going to do that right now. And Again, hope you found this video informative and helpful. Like I say, I tried to show everything the whole way through from the beginning to the end with the limitations of my video equipment, and here we're going to see if it works. We're going to hop in the car and we're going to watch the window go up and down. And again, thank you for watching. Appreciate any comments, likes. Feel free to subscribe. And look at that, it works just like new. Thank you again.